Muy buenas tardes, son las 8:05 de la noche, nos atrasamos ahí unos minutos, estábamos coordinando con los intérpretes que nos van a acompañar esta tarde para poder traducir a Michelle. Les damos la más cordial bienvenida a cada uno y una de ustedes en esta primera actividad del año, donde vamos a conversar sobre un tema tan relevante como es la forma en que podemos ayudar a nuestros hijos e hijas a poder florecer, generar esos hábitos tan importantes para que les vaya extraordinariamente bien. Y tenemos quizás a la persona más relevante hoy día a nivel, no se voy a decir mundial, internacional, pero quizás más importante, como es Michele Borba, que nos va a acompañar. Y dejen decirle dos cosas antes. Michele va a hablar en inglés, pero ustedes tienen una pelotita que hay abajo a la derecha en su pantalla de Zoom, donde podrán cambiar, si quieren, a español o a inglés. Van a haber intérpretes que van a estar cambiando esta forma de lenguaje para que ustedes puedan optar al idioma que más les guste. Y además, los invito, Michele va a introducir el tema, va a un poco summarize, va a resumir lo que es el libro y después la idea es que puedan hacer las preguntas y comencemos la conversación. Nos va a ayudar Mónica Nelson de El Grange, que va a estar mediando la conversación, las preguntas entre ustedes y el resto, ¿no es verdad?, de los otros papás, mamás y también, por supuesto, de Michele. Michele, si es que yo te hablo ahora en español, ¿te están traduciendo?
It's my turn?
No.
You're doing such a good job.
Okay, Michele, thank you very much to be with us. It's a pleasure and honor to have you again after almost a year. So it's a great adventure for us. Michele, thank you very much.
Oh, you know what? This is an absolute honor. So thank you. I am so glad. I just wish I could be there in person. Remember the last time I was there, I had been in Santiago just about a year prior to when we were talking, and then came COVID and the world seemed to shut down. But I would love to be able to share with you a little bit about what we know about children now, what we're seeing in the world on the need for resilience. Actually, almost every night, last night I was speaking with Canadian parents. The night before that was Philippines and then Hong Kong. Everyone is concerned about kids, and we're remarkably seeing some very similar trends. I wrote the book Thrivers, and thank you for having a copy of it. It just came out in paperback 2 weeks ago, right before COVID hit. I was starting to see a mental health crisis in countries that I was visiting, especially in more affluent areas. And that is, their kids were more stressed and they were more anxious. So if you're looking at the first introduction, and it starts in Thrivers, you'll see that I'm speaking to a number of children in different spots of the world, and my radar of concern went way up. What I was beginning to see was that 1 in 5 American children was going to suffer from a mental health disorder, and I couldn't figure out the why. And I finally realized some of it was because of how they were being parented in today's world. It's a different world. Our children are more digitally driven. They're looking at screens and not each other. We became more competitive. We became more concerned about their grades and their test scores, which are clearly important, but we also forgot their character and resilience. So you'll notice that in Thrivers, what I tried to do is, most importantly, begin to show you a model. And each chapter in Thrivers is one of the 7 traits. We talked about them a little bit last time, but I want to focus on them a little more now, and then time for you to ask questions. But when I looked at all the research, parents, there's an enormous amount of research on why some children are able to rebound. Adversity hits, some kind of a tragedy or a trauma, and some kids can rebound faster. And it doesn't mean that the experience hasn't haunted them, but they're still able to get on their way. And that's what resilience is. We now know that all of our children are going to face a different, uncertain world. We've gone through a pandemic, but we now know that when the pandemic, if it ever stops, there's going to be more uncertainty. Something else is coming down. Your own country has gone through some big strikes. So too has ours. We don't know. And so the best thing I think we can do is parent our kids for resilience. And the thing that's fascinating is that if we help them learn these 7 strengths, not only will it help them rebound, but it'll also help them reduce the mental health problems and be better able to be employed. These are the same skills that employers worldwide in the World Economic Focus Forum group says will help our kids be more likely to get the job and to be able to be peak performers. So let's look at a few of these and zero in on just a few in particular. And then if you have questions, I think you were asked to put them into the chat room because I'd be happy to answer anything you have, and they will be asked to me later. But the first thing I'm seeing that I don't know if you're seeing is what we now see is called regression. Our children during the first couple of years or the first year in the COVID crisis were faced with the mental health. Anxiety went way up. Stress went way up. And if they didn't have those protective buffers that are the skills of thrivers, they were more likely to continue to have those anxiety, and then depression hits. In the United States, since I left you, 77,000 American pediatricians signed an unwavered precedent that said mental health is now a crisis. It is a national crisis, and we parents and we educators and we pediatricians need to put all our energy in helping our kids with the mental health crisis. I would venture to say it also happened in China. It's happened in the Philippines. England, Germany are all seeing the same trends. So we better keep a pace on them. We also know that our children's confidence is going down. When uncertainty continues to go up and up and up, confidence goes down. If you're reading Thrivers, the first thing, please, I suggest you do is go to, first, you can take the little simple survey of how well your own children are handling adversity. And you'll see the pages in the introduction that you can actually take just 5 minutes and go, of these 7, what's your child's strengths and what's their deficit? And then aim for their strength. Is that what you really are wanting to do? The second thing I want you to do, and I think it's the most critical, is then go to chapter 1 and take a moment to realize that above all else, what our kids need is your knowledge of them, that you see them as really a good human being, that you're going to get through this together, sweetie pie. But also there is a very simple 4-page survey that identifies 150 strengths that any child could have. Please take a moment and identify your child's strengths, because I think what we do is overlook them. And what we're now seeing is behavior is regressing. Are you noticing that your child, maybe your little one, used to be toilet trained, but maybe all of a sudden he stopped, he's wetting the bed again? Or maybe you're seeing that your child used to be able to sit still or have a longer attention span, is now shorter. It's called behavior regression. They're more irritable than they used to be. And if they're not, good for you. But most kids around the world, first of all, we're seeing regression going. The second thing that teachers are saying is that our children are also becoming more, their learning abilities are taking a little bit of a dip. They're learning less than they used to, or they're losing that developmental regression. And third thing is they're more socially anxious. Why not? They've had 2 years of worrying about health and well-being. So take a moment, figure out what their strengths are, parent. And then maybe what you can do is, once you identify their strength, all the research that I did on resilience says that you can then start finding the strength. Maybe it's they're kind, or maybe it's they're musical, or maybe they're artistic. Maybe they have a good sense of humor. Emmy Werner, one of the best researchers on resilience, says one of the neatest things we can do as parents is now find the strength and identify a hobby for the child that's healthy that goes with the strength. If he's musical, maybe guitar lessons. If she's artistic, maybe it's art lessons. Maybe if it's humor, he's the joke teller around the dinner hour each night. Kids need a moment to shine and share their strengths. The fascinating thing resilience research says is that those strengths also help your child so that when push comes to shove and he needs a way to cope, he uses the hobby in order to cope. That's what confidence is. We can talk a little bit more about that. But the second strength I want you to zero in on is chapter 2 in Thrivers. We now learned, and I bet you've learned it too, because we social distanced, because our kids were using computers more than ever, and that was their safety net. They were texting their friends. They couldn't see them in person. What happened is they didn't get a chance to exercise their social skills. So we're seeing our children feeling a little lonelier. Teenagers tell me they're having more problems being able to read each other. They can't see, how does he feel? How is he doing? Because they can't resonate the facial expressions. Empathy needs emotion vocabulary. So maybe, parent, the first thing you may want to do is talk emotions more in your family. You look sad, or you look stressed, or boy, you look really frustrated. Let's look at grandma when we're doing a FaceTime. Notice how she seems to look. Notice when she gets a little tired. And the reason for it is when kids have a strong emotion vocabulary. By the way, girls have a stronger one than boys. And the reason is, I'm a mother of 3 sons. It's because we talk emotions far more to our daughters than we do to our sons. Talk emotions. The second thing is teachers note that when kids have a stronger emotion vocabulary, they're able to feel with another human being, but they're also deeper and deeper thinkers in the classroom. They're more engaged in their learning in the classroom. The other thing that you can do is start deliberately, if your child is a little lonelier, you want empathy to rebound, you want them to feel okay about going back into classrooms or connecting with each other. 4 things that you can do that are so simple, because the empathy also needs social skills, and social skills, friendship skills, need to be practiced. The first social skill that kids don't do nearly enough in the last 2 years is just start saying hello to one another. They're more socially anxious, so they're backing off. So as you, mom or dad, are walking maybe into a store, or you walking around the street, would you please deliberately say hello or hi to other people? When your child sees you modeling the skill, they're more likely to copy it. Or maybe each week you just focus on one skill in your home. Let's wave or let's smile a little more. The second thing that resilient children do for empathy is they use eye contact. They've been looking down at those screens, parents, and as a result, their confidence level is also going down, but they're not looking at facial expressions on their friends. No, it's been hard because they've been wearing masks, but you can also read each other with eyes. So and body posture and listening to verbal expressions, listening to a voice. So the second thing is make a rule in your house. Always look at the color of the talker's eyes. Look up, not down. That's empathy. The third thing is popular children. Friendship, they encourage one another. So deliberately encourage your child to do just friendship making skills with each other. A simple idea with that one would be when you play card games, or you play chutes and ladders, or you play chess, make a rule that you stick by the rules, but you also encourage the other person with an elbow bump or good job or high five. What we're finding is that socially competent kids encourage one another. And the final thing is just when you're with somebody and you don't know them and your child happens to be there, walk up, introduce the person with just a handshake and go, hi, my name is, what's yours? Children are telling me that they're having problems learning how to make new friends, and they're feeling more and more socially anxious. Empathy is the seeds for mental health. Relationships seem to matter. Our children are lonelier. One of the other things I'd strongly suggest you do is get those books out and start reading as a family together, because we do know that literary fiction, books that when you read, you step into the shoes of the character. It's why Harry Potter is so popular with children around the world, because it really is stepping into the shoes of the character and understanding where they're coming from. You can read those books together, but you can also do tapes and listen to them in the car. You can put just an old sheet over the dining room table and make it into a reading fort for little ones. And you can every night just read books. It helps kids relax, but it also boosts empathy. We can talk more about that one, but I'm very concerned right now that we are seeing a loneliness epidemic in the world, and our children are far more anxious than before. Separation anxiety, I'm afraid to be dropped off. I want to stay with mom. Clinginess is also coming in. If those are your kids, notice that they're not alone. That's what's happening around the world. Third one is self-control. That would be chapter 3. And I want to zero in on self-control for a minute, because it is probably the key to resilience. When you are faced with a challenge, what we want our children to be able to do is not give up, not raise a white flag, but to be able to take the challenge or the adversity and say, I got it. I can do this. One of the highest correlations, parent, of a child who's resilient, he's the ability to bounce back, is that he has what's called agency or self-efficacy or autonomy. It's a kid who says, I got this. What do we do that robs resilience? We rescue them, or we do it for them, or we step in and we talk for them. The first thing on self-control is that a child needs to know, I have some control over my own life. Mom or dad or the teacher aren't going to do everything for me. So please make a rule in your own mind to start watching your own behavior and take a moment to say, I'll never do for my child what my child can do for himself. Slowly start helping your child realize you got it. I'll show you some other ways to do that. But the other thing is, he's got to start putting the brakes on his impulses. Our own stress, by the way, is actually very often higher than our children's stress. So the best way to model and help your children learn self-control is to be a model of self-control. That's hard, isn't it? Because we're really worried ourselves. But you see what's happening. We knew this from World War II. A lot of studies were done in England when they watched children during World War II and which kids were able to, during a horrific war, handle the war better and to be able to, if there's ever a way, be able to bounce back and be resilient. And the highest correlation they found is that the parent was able to model, I got this, sweetie pie. The parent was able to model calmness, so too did the child. In the United States, what we've discovered is the best study that just came out, just was released, on which of American children are doing better during COVID. 14,000 middle school and high school, that's like 11 to 17-year-olds from different demographics were analyzed. And they found that the single greatest correlation of which kids were rebounding, which kids were more likely to be resilient, it's a child who had an I got it feeling, but it's also a child who had parents who were modeling resilience, parents who were modeling calmness. So the first step to self-control is take a moment on chapter 3 to look at everything in there, and there's a lot of things there, parent, and then ask yourself, which of those strategies can I first start to learn, model in my own home, and then do it over and over again so my children see me. The best thing is actually a 2-1 breath. And we learned that, you'll see that over and over again. We learned that the monks in, when I was in Tibet, you'll see that the stories in all of the chapters in Thrivers are based on my views and we just work around the world. But when we looked at monks in Tibet and we had the Dalai Lama send them to fly them over to Madison, Wisconsin, they put them into MRIs and they looked at their brain right here. Because they practiced slow, deep breathing and prayer, they actually were expanding the part of their brain where compassion is, self-regulation, and resilience. What did they do? Other than prayer, every day they did slow, deep breathing. Same you can do in your own home. They took a slow, deep breath the moment the stress built from deep in their tummy. Oh gosh, like they're riding up an elevator, getting oxygen into your brain is the fastest way to relax, and then hold it. Now slowly let it out, but make the exhale be twice as long as the inhale. And if you keep focusing on the breath, and oh, how many hours it takes for you to practice, parent, but that slow, deep breath over and over again, what ends up happening is your child begins to learn a way to manage his own stress. Do you have a young child? Then put your back to your young child's back. Lock arms and elbows together. And what you're going to do this time is take a slow, deep breath so your child can feel your back and take it in and breathe up and down and up and down. Teens tell me that one thing that we're doing wrong, don't you love it when teens say, here's what parents are doing wrong? But it's interesting when they say something right, is that we're teaching them these skills, but we're not practicing them enough. So the kids aren't able to practice them enough so they can finally do them without us. Remember that word agency? The highest correlation of a thriver is they're able to do these things without us. So I want you to take a moment when you look at the whole chapter on self-control and say, what do you think your child needs? Or what does your family need? And one more thing, if you have a very young child, you can teach that 1-2 breath a little bit differently. You can say, the first thing you're going to do is pretend you're smelling a flower. They get that as just a mnemonic. That's the first thing. Hold it. Now slowly let it out like you're blowing out a birthday candle. And the breath goes down, but the exhale always needs to be twice as long as the inhale. There's a lot of ideas. I just love the ideas that are in self-control. Some of the schools that I visited that are doing some of the most brilliant jobs of tools of the mind. One other little thing that I love is for very young kids. Right now, focusing ability is lower with all of our children, lower with us, because when your stress builds, and particularly if you've been looking at screens all the time, your focusing ability goes down. So what they discovered, you'll see in the chapter 3 of the first story, Tools of the Mind for Little Guys, is they had them just take a 3x5 card and they had them draw, what is it you're going to work on today? Or which center do you want to work on today? And the teacher and the child would develop a play plan. Like, I'm going to go build blocks. Okay, let's draw a picture of it. Now, what are you going to do? I'm going to build blocks. Good. Hold your play plan and go. Now, what they discovered that was amazing. Oh, parent, this is just a gold mine. If the child started to leave the play plan and started to leave the blocks, all the teacher had to do is say, what was your plan? Oh, yeah, I was supposed to do the blocks. Good. And he goes back to the play plan. You can do the same thing with an older child, but not like that. Take some 3x5 cards or Post-its and draw or write. What are the steps or the things you need to do tonight in order? Now put them in order and then rip them up each time you do them. Children say they need time management skills, and that could help. I want to skip integrity because I know that we talked a lot about that last time. If you have questions, we can go to it. But I want to just center in on a couple more. The first one is curiosity. And I want you to please, if you can do anything, skip right to chapter 5. The most amazing thing that I did when I was viewing schools around the world who were extraordinary, I went to MIT Media Lab in Cambridge. That's for adults. And it's the place where the best inventions in the world are being created. artificial intelligence, robots, Surrey, driverless cars. And I sat there talking to the director of MIT saying, how do you create such extraordinary creativity? And he said, the key to creativity is keeping curiosity alive. And the key is that the person has to have agency. But they also need to, first of all, realize that they can solve no matter whatever comes their way. So parent, the takeaway for resilience is whenever your child has a problem from this moment on, swear that you will not solve it. Instead, you just say, like MIT would say, what's the problem that needs solving? For big people, it would be, like artificial intelligence. Okay, for little kids, I'm being picked on. Thank you for telling me. Now let's brainstorm what you could do instead. And you actually start helping the child learn things that you can do instead. Just rapid fire. MIT says, keep coming up with the ideas. Even if it's just for a minute, just keep rapid firing the ideas. And when you're all done, take the deep, slow breath and say, so which on the list we're going to get rid of? What's safe, or not wise, or not responsible, what you don't feel comfortable doing. You're teaching your child how to keep his curiosity alive. So when he faces a challenge and you keep just working through problem solving, he'll know that's no problem so great that can't be solved. So you begin to see that each of these strengths is teachable. I only chose them because they are teachable. The second thing, parents, is there's never too late to start teaching them. You can start usually around the age of 2 because it's when our kids start to develop a little vocabulary and they can speak, but it's never too late. Some parents go, oh my gosh, he's a teen or he's about ready to go to college. These same traits are now being taught in universities because they realize our children, Yale is teaching them, Stanford is teaching them, because our children coming in to the best and the brightest universities in the world are lacking resilience. And they say, unless they have them, they're not going to be able to stay here and do their best. So they're teachable at any age. Another thing, when I was writing Thrivers, and you're going to see dozens and dozens of ideas, and each idea is age related, I want you to do one more thing. I want you to realize that it's a rare person, a rare grown-up that has all 7 of those strengths. So what I want you to do instead is start with the child's strength area. What do you already have going in your family? Maybe you're already doing your optimism, or maybe you're already teaching empathy. Start there. And then the next thing is go for one more strength area that the child needs, because if you add any 2 strengths together, any one strength amplifies the other strength, so they become like superpowers. See, resilience is not one strength. It's a combination of strengths. We need to figure out what our children need. And each of these traits you're going to see as you go through Thrivers is made up of just skills. In the very back of the book, you're going to get a chart of each of the skills that is critical that you can teach in order to boost that particular resilience strength. And then along the way, what you can also do is keep realizing that this doesn't have to be so hard, parent. We're stressed. We're working so difficult and so hard ourselves. But if you take just one little skill at a time and you say, I'm going to weave it in maybe a minute or 2 a day into my home or into my class, if you're a teacher, and I'm going to keep repeating the same strength over and over again, that's what creates a resilient child. Kids who have agency never do for the child what the child can do for himself. And the other thing we discovered about resilient children is that they can handle the adversity because we're slowly starting to give them little bits of challenges in outside their comfort zone. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Remember, your expectations also have to be tuned into the child. You want to gently stretch them without snapping them. So make it look like a rubber band. So take a moment. I'm going to turn this over to you and you can ask questions for the rest of your life. But my first thing to you before we stop is that which of those seem to interest you? if you have questions about something that I haven't covered, because the last time we were together, I didn't want to repeat them for you. And I know many of you have read Thrivers, so I wanted to make this relevant. But my first question to you is, which of those is your starting point? Which is the ones that I don't care which order you go, but which do you think your children are going to need, your family is going to need in order to thrive more? Now, then don't read the book from start to finish. Just flip to that chapter. Start in on, maybe it's optimism. I'm concerned that he's more and more pessimistic, or I'm concerned that he's giving up like he didn't used to before. Figure out what he needs, then go from there. And that's how we're going to raise up a thriving generation. I'm going to stop a minute. I'm going to go for any questions you have. And then if you don't have them, I'm going to keep talking, because what I really want to do is make this work for you. One more thing that I know you're going to ask is, Thrivers is also being translated into different languages. It's also in audio form as well as reading form. And it's also in digital form if you have a Kindle and you'd rather have it that way. It was, the last time we talked, only in hardback. It's now in paperback. So there's lots of possibilities. The other thing that I strongly recommend that other parent groups are doing is don't read it alone. Get another like-minded parent and read it together. Just go into the one chapter, or just, why don't you read page 220? I'll read page 220 and let's do this together. Because look, it's lonely doing this ourselves. And if you can find another like-minded mom or dad, grandparents are a gold mine. Pass it on to the grandparent as well. That's how we're going to raise up a generation. So we're all on board together and reinforcing the same thing. What do you want repeated? What questions do you have? I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you, Michelle. We already have a big number of questions. So,
okay.
Yeah, the first I have here, it's not the first question, but anyway, they were asking, how do you work perseverance with kids?
Oh, perseverance. Here's what we know. I love that you asked about it, because it's probably the top question that I'm now getting asked by parents. And the reason for it is, are you noticing that your kids are not as we say, motivated like they used to be, or they're giving up quicker than they used to be? Or I just did a focus group with a number of kids and they say, I don't know what it is, but we're kind of like lazy. Why is that? So let's talk about it, because the first thing is I want you to have some empathy for your kids, and then let's talk about some strategies for perseverance. The first thing you're going to notice is that perseverance is kind of nosediving for children, because if self-control is low, I can't keep the brake on my stress, that impacts your focusing ability. So their attention span is shorter. I don't care if they're 3 or 45 than it used to be. Are you noticing that your attention span is lower? Are you noticing that you're kind of zoomed out these days? So what do? First thing is you teach self-control. You teach perseverance and self-control at the same time. You don't quit doing one. It's not like you're going to stop helping your kid be the best they can be, but you're going to help your child figure out how to keep the brakes on that stress. Because when stress mounts, guess what, parents? Cognitive abilities stop. You cannot think at this level of your brain when your stress at a lower level is taking it and zapping it. Find a stress management technique, go to chapter 3. Number 2, first, perseverance. Use the rubber band technique. Figure out your child's capability in the area you're worried about. Did he stop practicing the guitar? Or maybe all of a sudden his math skills are going down. What's the area that worries you the most? Not everything, but zero in. Next, conference with the teacher. Find out what his ability is at this moment, not what he used to be or what you think the other kids are doing. What's your child's ability? You've got to zero in on that ability. And now from this moment on, what you're going to do is stretch your child gently. The next thing you're going to do for perseverance is use Carol Dweck's research. Look at chapter 6. It's a gold mine. Carol Dweck is one of the best researchers we have in perseverance in the world. What she found is that children more likely to hang in there and not give up have parents who don't emphasize, what did you get? What was your grade? What was their test score? She said the parent instead emphasized the effort. I love how hard you worked yesterday. Yesterday, you were hanging in there for 30 minutes. Today, you were hanging in there for 35. They took one step more. That's what I want you to do. Emphasize, I know this is hard. When the kid says, I don't know how to do this, Mom, you say, you don't know how to do it yet. You make success in your home be a gain, one step more. Here's another thing I want you to do, and use what Olympic coaches do. When a kid, as an Olympic athlete, never says, I'm quitting. The coach who's really good says, let's review the tape. Let's review your swimming yesterday, and let's find the one little thing that's getting in your way, not your swimming, but the one little thing. Too often we make it too big. Zero in on the stumbler, the thing that's getting in the child's way of succeeding, because that's what's creating the stress. If the stumbler is maybe he's borrowing and carrying the wrong way, or maybe he's forgetting to write down the homework assignment, or maybe he's doing his homework too late, is there one little solution? Or if the stumbler is the one thing that he's borrowing and carrying the wrong way, then zero in on helping him learn how to correct that one area. And that's what really good coaches do. It's your foot. You notice your foot on that soccer field? If you put your foot this way, you'd be able to kick stronger and harder. Those are a few things about perseverance. Read that chapter carefully, because there's a lot of research that says, again, we can stretch it if we push and emphasize the right things for our children.
Now, Michele, two questions that are a bit related to that. One is, would that mean then that the idea is to start with a strength, and then which is with what is more descent or lower, or I don't know how you say it, but that
yes.
Order?
Yes, yes. Yeah. I love that question. Then you're going to ask me the second question after. Let me address that one so I won't forget it. And here's why. A lot of the research you're going to see in Thrivers was based on looking at amazing science-backed studies, and some of it was what created peak performers in the workplace. And Clifton Notes from the Gallup poll discovered that too often what curtails our perseverance is we focus on the weakness and not on the strength. In fact, parents, oh gosh, we're going to feel so guilty at the end of this, so don't. But here we go. We emphasize the weakness 77% of the time. We stress what needs to be fixed. And so what happens is the child's confidence goes down, and there goes his perseverance. Notice the multiplier effect. Confidence and perseverance worked hand in hand. That's the multiplier effect. It's real hard to push perseverance if you don't have confidence. So the answer to your question is start with the strength and acknowledge the strength. First of all, it's going to make the child feel a heck of a lot better, because he's then going to go, oh gosh, Mom knows what I'm good at. Then his confidence starts to soar a little bit, and then you can slowly add, now let's work on what you can improve a little more, but don't stop from who the child is naturally.
Perfect, because well, that's not easy. So yeah,
it's not easy. It certainly is not easy.
We tend to focus on the weaknesses. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Now, some of the questions are kind of they're looking at teenagers and some other smaller children, but there's one that, although it's related to younger children, and that is how can you cope with tolerance to frustration that's really low, especially in the little ones, but I would say also in teenagers.
Oh, Mom, it makes whoever wrote it, Dad, Mom, Grandma, whoever wrote it. We are seeing irritability across the board. And also next week, I am doing it with in a business world. And they said, please come in because all the adults are so irritable. So we're all really on edge. The first thing is recognize it. Because the worst thing we do for irritable kids or irritable spouses is we react. Watch it. Because when you react, It means, why are you doing that? Or your face goes like this, or you want to tell them that isn't the way to act. And what does is that it actually increases the irritability instead of stopping it. It's kind of like, have you ever watched a movie? Oh, please do sometime in your spare time, of any movie that deals with a really good negotiator. FBI negotiators in our country have actually discovered that the goal to go into a really, really, really volatile situation is not to go in there and say, stop it and put your gun down. Instead, what they want to do is make the situation calm and trusting so the person can open up. And the first way you do that is watch a really good negotiator. They're calm. My point to you is be calm yourself, and it's really hard. And so my first point to you is figure out how you're going to respond differently now, not when you are upset, because nothing makes us more upset than an irritable child. The second thing is I'm going to please encourage you to do something else. And that is watch your child. I don't care if they're 17 or 3. The next mistake we do is we wait until the meltdown, like the temper tantrum. And they're in the middle of the toy store aisle, and I hear the parent, when the kid's in an exorcism, telling the kid, calm down. And I want to tell the parent, it's too late. You should have waited, and you should have started when the kid is at the beginning of the meltdown. And you can see it. Watch the child and see if you can identify what they do each time before they're in meltdown. The kids will do the same thing. Some kids go like this. Some kids, their feet start to go. You've got seconds, parent, until the meltdown comes. Some kids, you can see them grind their teeth. Maybe the first thing you can do as a family is start helping each other identify what your stress signs are. This isn't time out. This is time in. I notice that right before you get stressed, sweetie, you always go like this. Or I notice that right before you get stressed, you start to rock. And then what you could do, another thing, don't do all of these, but find one, is that many parents are also coming down with a calm down signal. Many of our kids, when they're irritable, they get very verbal. And then we get verbal back. And it gets into a shouting match. And it doesn't get us anywhere. But if you go like this, it means I need space and I'm not going to say anything. You can do the same thing. If you need space, you go like this, but you don't say anything. You walk away and then you come back. Some families are also creating calm down corners in their homes, a space you can go to that your kids help you create. For if you're talking about a 3-year-old, you put bean bags and their teddy bears. If you're talking to a 17-year-old, 17-year-olds tell me they load their iPads with really soothing music. Or a 14-year-old says, I put my goldfish there and I watch the goldfish go round and round. Find what works for your child. I gave you a number of things, but irritability, you got to respond and not react. And the first thing is, if you respond the right way, you'll help your child be able to decompress so he won't be so irritable. And then you can get to helping him learn how to decompress. It's hard, parent, but it's so critical. And that's a big piece of self-control.
Oh, and they're asking then, why do you think children in general are more stressed and more irritable? Does it have to do with what you said first, pandemic and all these things, or any other reason?
Can you tell me the question of why are they more irritable now?
Yeah, that's a question.
If it's why are children worldwide more irritable and regression, it's because they've endured 3 things that take resilience down. So let's empathize with children. Children are going to be more resilient if there's predictability, if there's structure, if there's certainty in their lives. Have we had certainty in our lives for the last 2 years? No, we don't know what's coming down the pike. And that uncertainty, will school be open? Will it not? Can I go to grandma's? Can I not? Will I be on Zoom? Will I not? Do I take an injection? Do I not? Uncertainty boosts stress. The second thing that boosts stress is fear. And many of our children, we can be calm. We can say, I didn't say anything about it. But tell you, if they're turning on a TV, they've been watching a daily death count. And now they're watching war feeds that are horrific. They're seeing news that is horrific. And it's fear. So what happens with many of our children is, particularly little ones, parents, they may see news and they don't know that that's happening in Ukraine. They may think it's happening next door. We learned that in 9/11. We found that many of our children were suffering from post-traumatic stress in California, even though it took place in New York, because they were watching the same image of the planes going through those towers, until finally we realized they think it's repeated attacks and they think it's coming again and they think it's down the street. Fear, or they watch us. The last thing is they don't have protective buffers to help them. They have none of these, or they don't have the, how do I decrease my stress? And so it starts to mount. What we know about children who have resilience, parent, is that they have you, a caring champion in their life. And frankly, that's the other great thing that's creating them to be more irritable. We're more irritable. And the other thing is they don't have those buffers. And maybe if there's a moment, let's have a drum roll and be really serious. If there's anything that we can do as parents in this world, is know that we are raising our children in a different world. We don't know what's coming down next. And that's why we have to prepare them for a different world of adversity. Hopefully all will be well, and hopefully where all our prayers will be answered, but we can't guarantee that. And that's why children who are more likely to have solid, good mental health are going to be kids that have these protective buffers.
Perfect. Now, do you think that's easier with little children or teenagers, or with anyone?
It is. We know that it's easier for younger children. And we know that because pediatricians worldwide have been looking at 5-year-olds versus 17-year-olds. And what we discovered, and what we did, is we started watching the number of children 5 to 11 or 5 to 7 who are going to emergency room visits for depression or anxiety and stress. And we saw a major increase in the last year. By the way, stress is increasing now, even though it looks like COVID's going down. Even though it looks like, so be careful, it's actually increasing. The other thing is we compared that age kids to kids 12 to 17. The first thing we noticed, parents, is that 12 to 17-year-olds were increasing in anxiety, stress, and depression, as well as suicidology. That's the first thing. Why? Is because they didn't have the protective buffers. But the second thing, they were reading and understanding the real major factors that were happening in the world. They tell me that they're really worried about the world. One of the things they say they're worried about most, this will kill you. Will there be a future? Will I have a world to live in? They're not just worried about war. They're worried about climate change. They're worried about all kinds of things that are happening in the world. Where younger kids, we can buffer them a little more because they're not so likely to hear the news and understand the news, or we can turn it off. Watch what's happening with your children. Empathize with them. You cannot talk a child out of fear. You can't. But what you can do is listen to them and figure out what the fear is. And then what you do is you break the fear down into nuggets. You don't throw a child, for instance, parent, who's afraid of deep water and swimming into the deep end, do you? But what you do instead is you chunk the worry. You don't try to talk them out of it. Yeah, it's silly to be afraid of the water. But instead you say, let's start with just putting your toe in the water. So you slowly chunk a fear into little dosages. And actually what you'll do is build their resilience and decrease their worries and their fear. I got it, Mom. I can handle it.
And Michele, and what if that child is going through a period where he's really low, he's really not motivated, kind of depressed? How can you help there?
Okay, let's be real serious, parent. And I love the question. Because some of our children, these things are going to be on the scale of we can help them because it's still stress and anxiety. When it goes up into depression, you have got to no longer say, I'm just going to work on some little traits and skills. I instead am going to call and get medical help. When do you call and get the medical help or get a trained counselor, a trained psychologist? I use TOO. Nobody knows your child better than you, parent. Nobody. So I would suggest the first thing is use a calendar without your child knowing and track your worries. How often are you seeing this change in this child's behavior? If you tried all of these things we're talking about, but it's not improving, how long is that going? Are you seeing that your child is too different from his normal? Okay? Every kid's going to have a bad day. We're all going to have bad days, but it's too different. The second worry is that it's increasing. It's too much of a change. Third thing, it's also my own radar. I'm too worried about my child. I know something's wrong. Then pick up the phone and get help. Because the best thing is for the counselor to say, this is normal. And it's also a best thing to say, it is depression. Let's do something about it.
Well, thank you for that, because the question was, which would be signs of alert that you need to ask for help, but you just said it. Oh, thank you for that. Now, well, still many questions. Also, what happens on self-harm that is seen now in teens?
Yes.
It's been increasing.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, I think the answer to the question is you've already said it, and I want you to be aware of it. We are seeing numerous new trends or increasing in trends. Here's the first thing you need to know. Kids, prior to the pandemic, were doing self-harm. Prior to the pandemic, they were depressed. Prior to the pandemic, they were anxious. But a crisis like this, any crisis, only amplifies a pre-existing issue. So the first thing is be aware that you will see an increase in self-harm. And this is when you see an increase in self-harm in your child, that's an immediate red flag that you need to get some outside help and prevention. All of these have solutions to them. But what we're finding is that medical professionals, we're now seeing, by the way, that the best kind of therapy for a child is called cognitive behavior therapy. That if you change the internal thinking pattern of a child, change their thoughts by helping them catch the worry, it'll actually change their behavior. This incredible psychiatrist named Aaron Beck discovered that your thoughts create your behavior. But if you can change that thought process, it'll help. So if you looked at cognitive behavior therapy or CBT, you'll see a huge, huge new intake. The trained therapists now are able to help children at a very young age. Here's another thing that's amazingly powerful. When I was writing Thrivers, I was looking at how early can we help prevent this. University of Pennsylvania for Optimism has been helping children at age 7 learn problem solving and how to catch worries. That's a worry. I'm going to catch it before it gets too big. And what they discovered is that they teach kids how to catch their worry at age 7. And they keep working on the strategies, the same ones that I wrote in chapter 7. And they keep working on them, not a one-time deal, but over and over and over again. What they discovered is by the time the child is 15, 16, 17, depression is far less than it would have been if the child didn't have help at age 7 or 8. And the child didn't have depression at 7 and 8. They were trying to figure out how to prevent depression and the mental health problems. That's what I'm trying to do. I was seeing such a huge upsurge in this, and it's finding science-backed strategies that are going to help us raise healthier kids from the beginning stages, so we don't have to get into the mode where now what do we do?
No, thank you for that. Now, here a parent says, I am currently reading your book, Unselfie. Would you then consider this is the beginning point for empathy? Because he says, or she says, as I read the book, I become overwhelmed as to where I start.
Oh, whoever is reading that book, don't you dare worry. Everybody is overwhelmed on where to start. In fact, if we continue to be thinking we have to do it all, and then our empathy levels go down, our stress builds, and you know what the end product is? Burnout. So the first solution to all of that is just take a moment in Thrivers and Unselfie. They both have the beginning, a little bit of a checklist. so that you look at your child and you say, which strengths does he already have? And pat yourself on the back, he's got that one. And which strength does he need? Once again, if you're reading Unselfie, which is all about empathy, or you're reading Thrivers, which is about resilience, don't try to do it all. Instead, start with the child's strength. Same with Unselfie. And then look again at the evaluation in the introduction and go to which one of the areas of the chapter that you think is a lower one, go to that one and just dig in and start with a Post-it note and say, when you go through it, here's the one strategy I'm going to try. Then close the book, put that one on your cell phone or on your bedroom mirror and say, that's the strategy I'm going to work on for 21 days, and I'm not reading the rest of the book. That's how you create change in a child and in your family. It's getting your foot in the door. It's actually a psychological trait. Get your foot in the door, try one strength at a time, one little skill at a time, keep practicing. Your own efficacy will go up. You'll slowly begin to see change, and that's what will make a difference with your children.
No, that's perfect. But the most important thing, as you said, start with the strengths and don't focus on the weaknesses, because that's fantastic. So we have more questions, but I know time is running. So I would like to ask you here, it says, how do you test for curiosity and connection between questioning and curiosity?
Oh, I love that question. Actually, some of the best studies in the world are on curiosity. And the first thing they're looking for, and you'll discover it, is an openness to possibilities. So a curious child has an open mindset. He's not like, okay, I'm not going to try that, or I'm not going to try that. They're just open to, that's a neat idea. I didn't know about that. Our little ones at age 2, 3, and 4 are absolutely glorious. Everything is a why question. It drives us nuts, but that's what curious kids are all about, the why. What we want to do is keep expanding their why. And then pretty soon what happens if curiosity stops, it's because we've given them too many, there's only one answer to that. Or we all know that if you keep evaluating it or getting a gold star for that idea, not that idea, it stops them. What you want to do is keep giving them ideas, possibilities, brainstorm as a family. So the most important thing that they learn is there's no problem so great that can't be solved. It's in my brain. All I need to do is storm it at the possibilities, because resilient children, they never see the challenge as, I might as well give up. I can't see around it. A thriver says, hey, that's a problem, but I'm going to find a way through it. And that's how we're going to help our kids thrive the rest of their lives, is find a way through it.
Perfect. Michelle, we have more questions. There's one I would like to ask you anyway, but I want to ask you first, for how long can we go? Because it's been almost an hour now.
Well, unfortunately, I thought this was an hour, and I've got somebody coming to my house in an hour. If there's one more question, let me know.
Yeah. Then one question, because they're asking here, if we try one skill at a time, and if you're a teacher and you're trying to make a difference from your class for 25 students, something like that, what can you do? How can you start?
Oh, thank you, teacher. Because you do one skill at a time. I have pilot sites in the country that are now taking these, and they're going through, and what they discovered in Temecula, which is Southern California, what they have done purposely is take one skill at a time. And then what they do is that they just keep repeating it over and over and over again, the same skill every day. And what they discovered is that the child who never learned the skill begins to get it. The child who was really good at it is just expanding it. And the most amazing thing, teacher, that they've done that I'm blown away by is that they've created what's called Thriver squads of kids. What they found is a group of kids, and they video the kids. And each month, the kids get in front, and we're talking about maybe 12 kids or 20 kids, but they're all kids that wanted to do it. The kids video the skill. And then they create the video, they put it on a screen, then the whole class watches it. They're all sitting up because it's not the teacher. They're listening to their classmates, and the kids are teaching the kids the skill. And they are creating phenomenal transformational gains. Everybody's happier and everybody's thriving. And by the way, The teacher is then learning the skill. And if you learn the skill by practicing it, your own burnout goes. So it's a win-win-win.
That's amazing. Now, Michelle, will the book be, because you said at the beginning something like that, but will it be in Spanish? Do you know about
To
that?
my knowledge, that my agent has said, I asked that it is being translated in Spanish. I have unfortunately no, I wish I could push it. I don't know when it's coming out, but thank you so much for that question.
But it will be then. That's
Yes.
perfect. And they are asking if we have some books. We will have them at school. I imagine that at Lincoln School, which is the other school that's joining us, I think they are going to have them at school as well. If anyone is interested, I have some copies. Daniel sent me some copies so we can share them.
Thank
So send us an email and we'll share them because it's a really, really good book. I've been reading it.
Thank
I went
you.
for that, Michelle. Amazing.
Thank you. Well, you can also go on Amazon, and I think Amazon is in each
Yeah.
country, but you can
Yes.
click it and there's another possibility. So thank you so
Perfect.
much.
Well, thank you. Daniel, you want to say goodbye?
Well, no, I know Michelle, it's has
Sí.
people who is coming, so it's at home, so only say thank you very much as always. Was very nice to hear everything, to listen to Michelle, like after to read the book and to rehear that was very like wasn't a reinforcement effect. So I'm very happy for me, and I guess also for all the people. So thank you very much again for everything. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Bless you all. We'll get through it one top at a time. We're going to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, and hope to see you here.
Oh, I would love to be there one of these days. I love your country and I love the people. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and enjoy your afternoon and your friends. Bye-bye, Michelle.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bueno,
Bye.
y aprovechamos de despedirnos también de cada uno y una de ustedes. Muchas gracias por estar acá hoy día con nosotros esta tarde, acompañarnos, a capacitarnos un poquito más, y esperamos que poder vernos en mayo nuevamente con la siguiente. Es extraordinario, es Dr. Cardigan, que es uno de los autores quizás de los bestsellers más relevantes hoy día, que es Glow Kids. Así que están ya todos invitados e invitadas para nuestra próxima sesión. Cariños, que les vaya muy bien, un gusto, muchas gracias, Mónica, como siempre, extraordinario ahí en las preguntas y en esa idea. Así que muchas gracias, y por supuesto también ahí a Javier y Marilú, que nos estuvieron ayudando en la traducción de Michelle. Que les vaya muy bien, muy buenas noches.
Muchas gracias, que esté muy bien. Gracias, Daniel, espectacular. Gracias.
Chao, chao, que les vaya bien, gracias.
Chao. Ya vamos.